Okay. Now, but before we get into cryptocurrencies, let's talk about false scarcity and the no jobs in quotes myth, the myth of having there being no jobs. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but only 2% of the world's currency is actually used for exchange of goods. If you look at all the money that trades hands in any given day on this planet, 2% of it trades hands for goods and services. The rest is actually, speculative stuff like, forex trading. And I'm not talking about the individual forex trader. I'm talking about interbank forex trading, debt derivatives, swaps, and so many other things. There's so much out there. So again, that's that idea of profit without producing, and the whole idea of the expansion of money supply through these kind of activities. It's literally out of thin air. So once we understand that, we can start to understand that there is no scarcity of currency. Only 2% of it is being used anyways for to pay people salaries or for goods and services. The rest is it's not really even in a it's not actually being used for whether it's jobs or whatever. So when we talk of scarcity, we can say that the scarcity is often falsely created when there is a systematic or a deliberate restriction from access to a means of exchange, despite the fact that people who are looking for that means of exchange have talents, they have internal value, they're able to do so many things. We are all able to do so many things. We can, I can do so many things. I mean, physically, mentally, with my hands, with the computer, with people, with the ground. There's so many talents that I've got the same as you. You can do so many things, right? So you got so many talents, you got so much internal value. And then when you look around the world, there's so much to do. Forget about official jobs that are listed on job boards. I'm talking about things to do. Like um, I don't even know how to start to say how many things are there to fix on this planet. How many innovations can we have? How many poor people can we help? How many things need to be done or fixed or built or there's so much to do. There's so much. Think of all the so-called problems in the world. Those are all opportunities to be solved. There's so much to do. So the idea that there's no jobs, again, and I'll show you why, it's a myth. And then there's also an abundance of currency, just like we said. Most of it is not actually used for trade, 98% of it. And then there are also real assets, real resources. The earth is full of resources. I'm not saying we irresponsibly go do mining and cutting of trees. I'm just saying there's a lot of resources on this planet, a lot of energy, a lot of, So despite the presence of people who are able to do things and things being there to be done and their resources and currency, then you still have this so-called scarcity. You see, so let's get very specific to examine that idea. The Great Depression ran from 1929 to 1939. That is 10 years. Okay, people suffered like you can't imagine. And it started rather, when 9,000 banks failed, during right after the stock market crash of 1929. How did they fail? Well, people literally went to the bank and, because people were scared, they thought, you know what? I'm going to go to the bank and just, get my money in cash. And so everybody did a bank run only to realize that money doesn't exist as cash. You know what I mean? That's why today, nowadays, you see the Fed Reserve, or even in Kenya, when banks collapse or they look like they're about to collapse, the government jumps in, shuts down the bank to prevent people doing a bank run, and then, in quotes, rescues the bank. It has to do it. It's not because if it doesn't do it, the whole system crashes and the whole myth crashes. People, the trick of confidence is lost. So they have to do it to maintain the trick of confidence. You see, so and that's what almost happened in 2008. That's why governments everywhere went and rescued the banks, because if they don't do it, you get 1929, the Great Depression, because really the whole thing is smoke and mirrors. Okay, so anyways, for 10 years, from 1929 to 39, people starved. And listen to this very carefully. This was despite the fact that people to work didn't disappear. The country still had people. And these people wanted to work, and they were still able and willing to work. They wanted to work. They didn't go anywhere. The things to do didn't disappear. The things that they were doing in 1927 were still around in 1929 and 30 and 31. The things to do didn't disappear. The resources and the assets didn't disappear. The factories didn't disappear. Yes, they closed their doors, but they didn't disappear. You understand what I'm saying? They were still there. As in, literally, people could, if they just decided, fuck it, we're all just gonna go to work, open the factory, let's just start doing things. They could, but the problem is the monetary system itself collapsed. It's only the monetary system that collapsed. Nothing else collapsed. But psychologically, this meant that, in quotes, there are no jobs, which means there are not enough ways or official currency, whatever, to exchange, means of exchange, to officially pay people so that they can do the job. So you can say there was not enough permission slips to issue for people to confidently exchange their time for whatever, to work. You understand what I mean? I know I'm oversimplifying a very complicated thing, but these are very short. We're trying to do this in one slide, okay? So please, if you're an economist out there and you've got a whole list of 10 other reasons why this happened, I get that, but we're simplifying something that's quite deep. But the point is, despite the presence of resources, people, and things to do, the means of exchange is what halted everything. And why? Because of the particular kind of system that was in place. Okay, this doesn't happen with every type of monetary system, only with certain kinds. Now, another good example is Africa. Africa, for those of you who don't know, actually has 23% of all the world's resources. People think Africa is poor. It's not poor. They've got 23% of the world's resources. Yet, it experiences poverty like no other continent you can imagine. Now, I'm not blaming all this on a monetary system. There's a lot of other things going on there, including, corruption, like in much of the world, but there's a particular kind over there, and also, lack of unity. But generally, the monetary system is very interestingly at play here, and I'll explain it to you just now. Africa has no equitable access to the international banking system. It is loaded with IMF-imposed, in quotes, structural adjustment program debts. This was actually something that was called the SAP whatever program or whatever. And Africa has to use foreign currency at externally dictated rates to do business. Okay, I'll give you a very quick example. So most of us know what the petrodollar system is. This is the international legal requirement that for any country to trade oil is traded in dollars, US dollars. Like, you can't trade dollars in other currencies, not really, not in the international market. Sort of by international law and agreement, it has to be in US dollars. So now look at this. Africa is legally required to buy its oil with US dollars, which it must work to earn by exchanging real assets or real labor or whatever. So it literally has to give somebody something real to get a digital currency. Now, when you look at the flip side, the United States also imports oil, right? But it does it by creating dollars out of thin air. It's the only country in the world that can do that. So compare those two access to banking, if you could say that. And these are just an extreme example. This access to banking goes down deep in so many levels that you cannot even imagine. But the point is, if I get all my oil literally for free by creating computer records myself, and you have to literally work like crazy and exchange your labor and your land and your resources for what I make for free, so that you can also get your energy, your oil, you'll never beat me. It's like it's a game that you cannot win. So although we're using Africa as an example, it's the same thing that happens even in the West within the elite system owners versus the non-system owners. Africa is just an extreme example, but it happens even all over the world. That's just how it works. It's part of the system. So the point is, if businesses and people can only get access to debt-based means of exchange, currency, and they can only get it from centralized banking systems, privately owned ones, okay, that then chokes them. It chokes the masses. It confines their capabilities and their freedom. Okay, think about that. So denial of access to official means of exchange, despite availability of real assets, internal value of people, and things to do, that points to one or a combination of three things. Either the system is flawed, or the system is built to deliberately effect control and governance over populations and over real assets, and it is a way that deliberately or not deliberately creates false scarcity and the control of resources. Okay, so this happens mostly with centralized, privately owned monetary systems, especially when they are based on debt, fiat currency. Now, I want to imagine something else different. Imagine people, imagine that people and businesses could get other kinds of means of exchanges that are not based on debt, and they come from decentralized autonomous sources. Okay, so they're beyond the politics of economics, currencies such as Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Okay, imagine if that could happen. Imagine if there are so many different, we'll call them tokens, okay, or cryptocurrencies, whatever word you want to use, so many different kinds, and you could earn them in so many different ways, and they don't have to come from a central system. So you literally don't have to get an official job to get them. You can get them just doing what you love. I don't know, whatever that could be. It could be just doing gardening at your home, in your backyard, and then you've got these very nice things that you've grown, and somehow you exchange them for these other crypto tokens that come out of, and I'll show you how that happens, but come out of, somewhere else. And so you can accumulate that little crypto token that is very good within your neighborhood. And when you want to do something that actually requires dollars, you could exchange those tokens for dollars or whatever, or you could just exchange those tokens for that other thing. So once you start getting off the debt system and you decentralize, you distribute, you get off the whole centrally, privately issued currencies, then interesting things start to happen. And that's already starting to happen. That we already have several years of proof that this works in several countries. Okay, so now let's talk about that kind of a new monetary system.